This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, citizen-made radio.
Kia ora and welcome to Emergence News. It's our pleasure to bring you this program from the Plains FM recording studios in central Christchurch City, Aotearoa, New Zealand. This program is dedicated to news on the emergence of Maitreya, the Lord Maitreya, the Buddha Maitreya, the World Teacher, the head of our planet's spiritual hierarchy. He will advocate for adequate housing and shelter for all, healthcare and education as a universal right, and saving the environment, and an end to starvation on a planet with plenty for all. It is no accident that these priorities, these issues, are constantly in our news each day. It is no coincidence that increasing numbers of people are marching in protest against governments who ignore these issues. The power, potency and energy of this enlightened master is changing world events. And the changes will increase in intensity until humanity looks after each other. So look for a man who is calling for justice and freedom for all. Look for a man advocating for sharing as the only answer to justice and so to peace in the world. And I'll bring in the guys here. John?
Yes?
Maitreya. Look for a man who
speaks for the people. Look for a man who speaks from the heart. Look for a man who is honest and sincere and detached.
Peter, what have you got to add?
Yes,
Maitreya.
We will actually feel in our hearts the energy of the Christ, because we already do it when we do our meditation. We already feel that. Mm-hmm. We know what it is. We know it's real.
And Benjamin Creme says that when we meet or see or feel Maitreya, we will recognise him.
Yes, we will.
Now, why is he an old brother, an old friend of ours?
We've obviously, in many times, many people have stood with him at some other time, some other point in history.
In other lifetimes.
Yes, indeed.
Now, speaking of humanity looking after each other, just before I came to the studio today, I read a quote from philosopher Bertrand Russell. And this was published in the New York Times back in 1950. And listen to this. He says, humankind has become so much one family that we cannot ensure our own prosperity except by ensuring that of everyone else. So if you wish to be happy yourself, you must resign yourself to seeing others also happy. Mm-hmm. I reckon, and I've often had the thought that he and Benjamin Creme, I wonder if they ever met, because I think they would have got on quite well. They might have enjoyed each other's company.
I have an idea he said that he had met him. Yes, yeah. I have an idea that... Yeah. I wouldn't swear to it, but I think that's true.
Yeah, he speaks a lot of sense, doesn't he? He speaks the same language as Creme.
Very much, yeah.
I think that's why I enjoy his quotes. The information about Maitreya's emergence was presented to the public from 1974 until 2016 by Scottish artist and prolific author Benjamin Creme. He was the chief editor of the Share International magazine. And on our last program, we featured two stories published in the latest Share International magazine. And we know this is a unique magazine. Many readers find inspiration and humour and comfort in the reader's letters to the editor and also the master's article each month. These are features that you won't find in any other magazine in the world. Added to these special features are articles and interviews across a wide range of issues that concern us all. And today, we're going to take another look. Peter and John are going to take a look at another couple of stories, because I reckon that this latest issue, John, it's...
loaded, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, that's right, Peter. So what are you looking at, Peter?
Yes, looking at UFOs, just touching on I see they're trying to talk about disclosure in American politics and at the Senate, and they're trying to get the military to explain a few things that they don't want to talk about.
About UFOs.
Yep.
It's amazing, isn't it? Coming out. Just amazing.
The Americans. And John, you're looking at a story which has clearly got you fired up.
Oh, look, and it's something that we've touched on many, many times, and that's injustice. And it's an article following some of the things that Bernie Sanders has been doing in the States. And Bernie Sanders is the guy that's met the Pope. Bernie Sanders is the guy that's been talking social democracy. He calls himself a democratic socialist. Bernie Sanders is the American politician that often references the Scandinavian countries and how they run themselves. So he's very much in line with a lot of what Benjamin Creme has said about the social, political, economic sphere.
Yes, he's a senator, isn't he? And he says the working class must come together.
He's got a very strong message that, lo and behold, talks about the power of the people, and I'll tick some of that off as we go through.
Okay, so John's next, looking at a story which we should all consider before walking into a polling booth on election day.
Oh, yes. Okay, Bernie Sanders. Now, it's the latest Share International. It's an article by John Coeli, and I'm sorry, John, if I've mispronounced your name. And he's been tracking some things that are happening in the States. And he starts with, as President Joe Biden signed into law an agreement on June of this year that would shield wealthy tax cheats from stronger IRS enforcement, while at the same time enacting cuts to key anti-poverty programs. So this is Joe Biden, man of the people. Senator Bernie Sanders and other progressive allies are busy denouncing the immoral, low-wage economic system in the United States, in which just a small handful of mega-billionaires have accumulated more wealth than tens of millions of hard-working but low-paid workers and their families. And Bernie Sanders leads in with this number of 3 men in America are richer than 165 million other Americans.
And it's
right?
gobsmacking figures.
And it's a global thing. I read some numbers a couple of years ago. 1% of the population in America controls 50% of the wealth. Oxfam put some figures out about 10 years ago, and they reckon that 8 men on this planet own 50% of the planetary wealth. Here in New Zealand, and I know all our New Zealand listeners are out there going, oh, but we are fine here. Figures released in 2017 show that 10% of Kiwis control or own 60% of the wealth in this country. Latest figures out last year, 2022, that number, 10%, has gone to 70% of the wealth.
Yes, COVID was rather beneficial for the wealthy.
The rich people in New Zealand did really well, thank you very much. So this is a global issue. But anyway, let me carry on. Bernie Sanders has said he's been giving a series of talk right through the southern states. The reason we are here today is not complicated. In the richest country in the world, we demand an economy that works for all, not just a few. It is not moral that 3 people on the top own more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 165 million Americans. That's not moral. That's not right. That's not what should exist in a democratic society. And he is so right. Remember, capitalism and democracy was going to make everybody rich. It didn't. That was the promise. Okay? So
only a select few.
Now, interestingly enough, when Bernie Sanders decided to do this tour, he asked a man of religion, Bishop William J. Barber II, to accompany him. And this guy, Bishop William J. Barber II, as the director of the Center for Public Theology and Public Policy at Yale Divinity School. And Bernie Sanders asked him to come along and specifically discuss the moral case for combating poverty and raising wages. And this Bishop Barber has gone into the Bible and he's pulled out some interesting numbers. I just love this stuff. He said there are over 2,000 scriptures in the Bible. detailing the worth of the poor and the value of the labourers. He goes on to say the Bible does not talk about taking a woman's rights from her body. The Bible does not talk about hating people because of their sexuality. The Bible does not talk about prayer in the school. The Bible does not talk about putting up the 10 Commandments. But more than 2,000 times, and he goes on to say more than any other subject other than self-worship, idolatry, the Bible says the way to please God is how we treat the least of these and those in the margins. Right? So there's this polarization in America at the moment with that right-wing, politicized Christian belief system, kind of epitomized in elements of the Republican Party. And basically what Bishop William J. Barber's saying is you've got it wrong. So he goes on to say in every age, moral people have had to rise up and decide to make the moral case that things have to change and injustice has to move. So what Bernie Sanders has been trying to do for a number of decades now is get the federal minimum wage in America, the land of the free and the brave, the model nation that we all look upon here in New Zealand as the way we want to be. The minimum federal wage in America is $7.25 an hour, and they want to raise it to $17 an hour. It's like giving people nothing and giving them a little bit more than nothing. $17 an hour, you couldn't survive in New Zealand on $17 an hour. It's awful money. Anyway, so they've gone on. They've quoted Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King stood on the steps of the Alabama State House and said, the greatest fear of the Southern aristocracy, and this is back in 1965, and the oligarchy, and I love that word oligarchy, was for the masses of poor Negroes and poor white folk to get together and form a powerful new voting bloc that would shift the economic architecture of the nation, right? So Martin Luther King, Peter, do you remember what point of evolution he was?
No, I'm not sure, but I think 1.8.
So Martin Luther King back in 1965 is saying, hey, they want to keep us separate. The way to defeat them, and he's talking about aristocracy, wealth, oligarchy, is to get together.
And what happened to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and a few others?
We kill them.
What happened
We don't like
in America?
what you're saying, we shoot them. President we don't like, we shoot them. Mad place, mad. Anyway, he goes on to say, and this is Bishop Barber still talking, the same people who are attacking gay people are attacking our voting rights. The same people who are attacking trans people are attacking our healthcare. The same people trying to take away a woman's rights are also against living wages. If they are cynical enough to be together, we ought to be smart enough to come together around a moral agenda. He goes on to say it's time for change and justice has got to move. You've got to make them hear you. You've got to make them see you. You've got to make them feel you. He said, this is a moral fight. This is a nation-saving fight. And okay, it's delineation around this wage, right? And the same thing's happened in France, right? With that pension issue that Macron's government brought in, it just was an incendiary for all sorts of other issues. Well, it would appear in America the issue is this poverty, this low wage economy that Americans are now waking up to. So, as in France and is happening here, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is where Bernie Sanders is making his stand, if you like. And he also talks about oligarchy. And Bernie Sanders goes on to say, in every way that you can think, said Bernie, there are really smart people out there polling today, and I'm going to put in brackets, in the business of polling, and they are saying, how do I get you to vote against your own self-interest? How do I get black and white and Latino and Native American, Asian American, gay and straight against each other so that big money interests laugh all the way to the bank? So really interesting concept. So Bernie Sanders is saying we're all being manipulated to keep us apart. Both him and a number of other American leaders are now starting to say We have to come together on clearly shared issues and make our stand. And I think for Bernie, it's this low wage.
He's a very courageous politician, Sanders, isn't he? Because a lot of what he's saying must make the majority of the Democrats and the majority of the Republicans very uncomfortable.
He must make them. And the other thing is he's
still there. He's still in the system.
He's independent. He's been on the government. He's been a governor in Vermont since 2006 as an independent.
He's a part of the institution.
They can't get rid of him. Yeah. So, and as you may remember, as a presidential candidate prior to the Trump years, it was him and. Oh,
he was backstabbed when he was him and Hillary Clinton. Yeah.
So he was winning.
The Democrats. Yeah. They rogered him.
Yeah, they did. So interesting guy, and he's basically saying it's the voice of the people. We need to move. Great article.
Yeah, great stuff, John. Thank you. You're listening to Emergence News. One of our American Share International volunteers, Cher Gilmore, reviews UFOs of God, an account of contact with our brothers and sisters from other planets in our solar system. Many millions in the USA alone are demanding that governments come clean about what they know. Many are critical of the way in which governments around the world have handled this matter. Governments maintaining a deception which keeps the world population ignorant of the true purpose of visiting advanced technology beyond Earth. And in just a moment, Peter is going to survey a large section of the July-August edition of Share International magazine. Like, there's pages and pages dedicated.
I can't believe it. It's amazing.
To the subject of UFOs over above our heads. So Peter is next, and in fact, you're ready, aren't you, Peter?
Great. Thank you, Nigel.
Let's go.
Last time in this program, we used part of the Master's message, the time of revelation. The last part of it was to do with UFOs, which is so perfect today with efforts to disclose what is known about the study. There is one major area in which we assumedly this is not the case. For over 60 years, governments worldwide have withheld from the people the reality of UFOs or flying saucers. Further, they have sought by all means to denigrate the occupants of these visitors as aliens, destructive and harmful to the people of the earth, to keep their population under control and to avoid panic. They have denied the experience of hundreds of thousands of intelligent, open-minded citizens. They have thus created a major myth. Flying saucers do not exist, but they are dangerous and rapacious to men of Earth. I don't know how we get those complete dichotomy. Absolutely ridiculous. Likewise, they have taught the people to deride the nation and the notion that crop circles are a legacy from space. Yet every government has unassailable proof of the existence, creativity, and superior technology of these brave and harmless visitors from the sister planets of our system. Our profound ignorance of the subtle planes of matter has allowed the major governments of the world to maintain this deception for so long. At last the time of revelation has arrived, for no longer will government agencies hide the truth from men of Earth. Their brotherhood with the far-off planets of our solar system, already the star-like luminary, the herald of Maitreya's Emergence, is showing people worldwide that for years they have been deceived by their governments. You may be sure that Maitreya will bring out the truth of our relationship with the other planets and of cooperation which for long has continued between us. It is in truth the time of revelation. So that was in Share International, that Master's message back in 2009. So this book review, The UFO of God, adds so much to the conversation about other types of experience, UFOs of God. Last paragraph is to do with many questions, but what it cannot seriously be questioned in is this guy's, Chris Bretso, upright and honest character. He's the author of this book, UFOs of God. His dedication to the truth, his lack of ego and self-interest, and his courage in bringing forth information that challenges a cynical world. These qualities shine through in his interviews as well. The book has been described as compelling, but gripping seems more accurate. It's an eye-opening read that should be circulated widely. Well, this book is actually reviewed by the Cher Gilmore, as John mentioned before. And some of the things are quite amazing. This is about this Chris Bledsoe. He's a rural North Carolina family man. And UFO of God, this is a description of Chris's rare and remarkable years-long personal experience with what he calls the phenomena. And this is not directly about UFOs, but it's about entities that are part of the UFO experience. The experience began on the 8th of January 2007 when Chris, his eldest son, Junior, and 3 fellow construction workers, friends, decided to celebrate a successfully completed home framing job with an evening fishing trip to the Cape Fear River. I think there was a movie about Cape Fear.
Robert De Niro. Yep.
So it's while the others were fishing, Chris took a walk and in a clearing encountered what looked like 2 gigantic reddish-orange suns hovering above the ground. They were completely silent, about 200 yards directly ahead, and he panicked, not knowing what to do. The instant he decided to run back to the river to join the others, a 3rd sun appeared, and the next thing he knew, he was 50 yards from the campfire they'd built, running towards it. More than 4 hours had passed since he left the river, his friends told him, though he said it was only seemed like 20 minutes. And his own son, still missing, had gone looking for him. When Chris finally found his son deep in a thicket, Junior described having seen 2 red lights about the size of bowling balls preceding him on the path. Suddenly they came towards him at speed, and he jumped into a brush to hide. He could not see there were 2 little entities glowing with red, fiery eyes. But he couldn't scream, and he was unable to move. Paralyzed, they seemed to be guarding him. Back at the campfire, the show continued. 9 balls of light appeared above the men and gathered in a circle, which first rotated and then scattered. 3 of them began to flash and descend into the woods just across the river. These were the same size as the huge ones he'd seen, but were pulsating with a brilliant white and electric blue light. The men were now completely spooked, and leaving their fishing gear at the river, took off as fast as they could, back to Chris's truck to escape. So it's absolutely amazing, isn't it? This has sort of freaked him out. But later he was told, we had a experience of a lady in white appearing to him and indicating that he had made an agreement before this lifetime had started that he would continue speaking out and that he would allow the orbs to be photographed. And he includes a photograph in this Share International magazine of one of these orbs. And I remember actually seeing a program that you had, John, on crop circles, and they were made by 2 orbs whizzing around in about 30 seconds, creating a crop circle.
Yeah, and there was actually a video too. Someone had sort of stayed up overnight and watched this happen.
Yeah.
And there was a video made because we've always wondered how they were made. We've always suspected or been told that it was the Space Brothers making crop circles, but we didn't know how.
No.
But basically, these balls of light descend and whiz around the field.
Yes.
And when they're finished, there's a crop circle. So it takes minutes. It doesn't take hours and hours and hours.
And you see some of the grasses are actually woven in between
the crop is not damaged at all.
No.
None of the crop is broken. It's, as you say, Peter, it's woven and bent. The other thing that happens is some electronic equipment won't operate within the crop circles.
Yeah.
And scientists have reproduced the energy that is present within a crop circle in the laboratory.
Have they?
And they find
it's quite a potent area.
They find that the crop grows more quickly.
Yeah.
So the crop is not damaged in any way by these crop circles.
No.
It's a very interesting phenomenon.
Yeah, but it's created by these UFOs and the space people.
It's not created by three blokes half drunk and aboard and run.
Who have since died years ago anyway.
Yeah, and and when you look at them closely, you can see that they are masterful.
Yeah.
Clearly not done by three university
And
students.
precise.
And precise and accurate.
Yeah, that's right. The
It would
edges
take
of
you
them.
hours to mark the paddock out,
Yeah, I know.
to get it. It's,
It'd be interesting to do, interview some of the farmers.
Yes, well, they're paid by the agriculture or the defence
quiet.
people.
The
don't they?
Ministry of Defence paid them for years
to mow them up real
mow them
quick.
quickly.
Yeah.
But they don't do that anymore. They leave them because the crop's not harmed, and eventually the farmer will come through and crop the crop.
Yes, that's right. So it shows that these manifestations are not just flying saucers alone, but there's also these orbs and also the this lady in white that came to talk to him and said that, actually he had agreed to talk about these things. And once he started talking about them, in spite of all sorts of reaction from, his church, which is one of the Pentecostal churches, health has improved. Things have been going right for him. And his fortune's completely changed. He's had visitors from CIA, NASA, and MUFON, and they've experienced these orbs as well. They've taken photographs and they've actually experienced them as well. So, he's made more friends than
we're on a tipping point of it all coming out.
We are.
And you know what?
It's a bit overdue, isn't it?
May precede the arrival of someone else. The emergence.
Yes. Hope so.
Let's go.
How
Nice.
prophetic, John.
Yes, thank you. Can we finish on that? I want to go home. All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.